To hear this and many more audiobooks not available on YouTube in a podcast feed, please visit the first link in the description below, and thank you for your support. America Against America by Wang Huning. Chapter 9. Reproduction of the System. Section 1. Education System. The most difficult task for any society is not the reproduction of goods or products, but the reproduction of institutions. By reproduction of institutions, we mean whether a particular social institution can survive in the next generation or in future generations. The strongest foundation for the existence of an institution is the identity of the society. Whether the new generation agrees with this identity or not is related to the question of whether a certain social system can be reproduced. The most important mechanism of institutional reproduction is the education of society. Social education spreads the socially produced values and thus provides the basic conditions for the survival of the system. In the United States, the mechanism of institutional reproduction is very well developed. The educational system in American society is so well developed that it is said that America is a paradise for children, a battleground for youth, and a hell for the elderly. The paradise includes the ability of children to receive a good education. Education also serves another function. The United States is a society without aristocratic traditions. The kind of traditional European society is not strong in the concept of hierarchy. Everyone has the possibility to enter a certain class of society. Society is naturally divided into classes and groups, and there is a hierarchy of high and low. The mastery of higher knowledge in a highly technically organized society is the passport to the upper class. This is also true in practice, where dirty and heavy work such as cleaners and porters is often undertaken by people with less education. Employees, technicians, or managers of large companies generally need a good higher education. Under such a mechanism, getting an education becomes a social belief. I say a belief because it constitutes a psychological sediment for most people. Charles R. Adrian says that parents always want their children to be well educated and want their children to be educated more than they are. While there is not as strong a notion of expecting children to become dragons as in Chinese society, no one expects them to become worms. Children going to prestigious universities is one of the top 3 components of the American dream. However, the organization of the U.S. social and educational system is unique in that it is not a uniform national organization, but rather one that varies from state to state. Each state has passed a law establishing school districts, which have the authority to administer public schools. The law provides for the establishment of local school boards and establishes the method by which their members are elected. Board members are usually elected by voters. This shows the importance of education. The law provides that the commission may levy taxes, borrow money, build schools, recruit personnel, and determine local school policy. The laws of the states differ in their regulation of the boards of education, specifying the types and rates of taxes that the boards may levy, the maximum number of loans, the length of the school year, the minimum salary of the teachers, the quality of the teaching staff, and the main elements of the teaching program. Many states select textbooks, establish syllabi, teaching methods, organize state examinations, and set minimum teacher-student ratios. Some states have also made it illegal to teach communism and evolution in the classroom. State legislation allows for strict control of the education system, often with nuanced regulations. Iowa, for example, mandates that high school students take classes on U.S. history and U.S. government, in effect, spreading American beliefs. The state has a Department of Education headed by a state school secretary. The Secretary of Education is an elected official. In some cases, he or she is appointed by the Board of Education or the state superintendent to coordinate the state's schools to meet the standards set by the state. The State Department of Education has the authority to coordinate and monitor instruction in the state's schools. It is responsible for providing technical and information services to schools, setting and implementing minimum standard curriculum plans, and approving teaching staff. In addition, the state can influence school decisions by subsidizing school funding. Although greater authority is available at the state level, the primary activities in local schools are the responsibility of locally elected boards. Local school districts are administrative special districts independent of the general local government, and therefore they have a great deal of autonomy. Local school boards determine the general policy of the school and have a great deal of authority within the provisions of state law. As a result, school board elections are highly competitive. Parents are naturally very concerned about what kind of education their children will receive in school. The field of education is the most contentious and divisive area in any society, where conservatism and progressiveness, tradition and modernity, theism and atheism will all be reflected. What the committee members believe will largely determine what kind of education the next generation receives. It is also a feature of American society that school districts have considerable power, and people elect their own representatives and decide for themselves what kind of education their children receive. The federal government has little substantive authority over local education. This phenomenon can be called the denationalization of education. In many countries around the world, education is nationalized, such as Japan, France, the Soviet Union, and China. It was once said that the French Minister of Education could sit in his office and look at his watch and tell a visitor which grade of students in all the elementary schools in the country were being taught which text, or even which part of the text the teacher had covered. There is an irony in that. The American education system is very different. Each local board of education has the authority to make its own choices. I met a member of the board of education who was of the old school and said he didn't like the way young students looked now, and he wanted everyone to look like they did before the 1930s, men in suits and women in skirts and flowers. What is the role of the federal government in education? In principle, there is little role other than to provide financial support and to sit on the sidelines. However, the increasing federal funding has also caused some controversy. Because federal funding will influence education policy, it will undermine the authority of state governments and local boards of education. There are also many private schools. Some are Catholic schools, and there is concern that religious choices will be affected. In addition, factors such as ethnic culture, property, and taxes all play a role. School committees are very political, and most of the people elected are local figures such as entrepreneurs, proletarians, managers, etc. Teachers are often distrustful of school committee people. They believe that educational policy should be in the hands of the teachers and that education should not contain a political element. In reality, this idea is unrealistic. I am afraid there is no education without politics, and I am afraid there is no politics without education. Each state also has its own university, usually 2 or 3. The universities are under the jurisdiction of the state government and are funded by the state government. The president is appointed by the state governor. State universities are not budgeted by the federal government. This system is worth exploring. If all universities were budgeted by the federal government would have more than enough money available to pay for them. The facilities at the school are of top-notch standard. One elementary school in Iowa City is laid out and decorated in a very modern way, with spacious and well-equipped grounds. Of course, good equipment does not equal high-quality education. Education in the United States also has serious problems. In some places, the quality of education is incredibly poor. See Chapter 11, Section 2, The Ignorant Generation. Racial issues also plague education, with white parents reluctant to send their children to schools with a large black population and government-imposed zoning and rotation systems causing social problems. There is a high rate of drug use among teenagers. The potential crisis in education, if not addressed, will become a major problem. In general, society has a relatively well-developed educational system, with education funding probably second only to military spending. Investment in education is the most important, valuable, and rewarding investment for the progress and overall development of society. A modern society needs not only modern equipment, but also people who can create and master such equipment. Modernization of people is the most important indicator of modernization. Modernization of people is a systematic social project that must be started from a very early young age. Who will do this arduous project, which cannot be stopped from generation to generation? It is done by the educational system of this society. One of the major defects of human beings is that the cultural knowledge and ethics acquired by the previous generation cannot be inherited and must be reacquired by the next generation. This is the biological certainty that education is crucial. Section 2. MIT. MIT, the famous Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, next to the city of Boston. We were greeted by Professor Lucien Pai, president of the American Political Science Association. He is a professor in the political science department at MIT. Strange as it may sound, there is a political science department at MIT, just as there is a political science department at the Naval Academy. See Chapter 9, Section 5, the U.S. Naval Academy. The political science department at MIT is very strong, and Lucien Pai is a well-known political scientist. Incidentally, on many occasions, the development of the American political system and its political science have gone hand in hand. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology is a quintessentially American university. The university was founded in 1861 and enrolled in 1865. The institution grew rapidly in World War II and after the war, a period in which its research grew more rapidly in conjunction with the needs of the war effort. At present, there are 5 faculties: Faculty of Agriculture and Planning, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Management, and Faculty of Science. The faculty focuses on science and technology and natural sciences, but also encompasses all humanities and social science disciplines. Because of the low enrollment in these disciplines, their quality is rather higher. MIT now has about 10,000 students, of which 4,500 are undergraduates and about 5,000 are graduate students. 50% of the student body is in engineering and 20% is in science. The competition at this school is so fierce that students who are not elite cannot get into this school. The budget of this school is staggering. The professor who received us said that the school's annual budget is around $1 billion, which is almost equivalent to the net income of Coca-Cola for 1 year. One of the professors at the reception was the director of the MIT Center for International Studies, and he said something about being poor. Our annual budget is very small, very poor, not comparable to the other schools of the universities. We only have $2 million. Is $2 million a small amount? This is a far cry from the concept of a Chinese professor. Certainly the budget of the department is small compared to the total budget of the college. American universities, especially the prestigious ones, are indeed rich in the world, and because of this, universities have played an important function in spreading modernity. The modernization of the United States can be said to be nurtured from its thousands of universities. The young generation first learns about modernization in the universities, and most importantly, gains modern awareness. If a generation does not have a modern consciousness, it can only enjoy modernization but does not create it. The university has enough funds to make it a laboratory of modernization, and it is like everyone who enters the university falls into the modernization tank. So when you leave the university, you have an indelible modernization consciousness. This is the role of higher education. The most important function of higher education is not to produce excellence, but to equip each generation, note generation, with a sense of modernity. How will such a huge expense be paid for? Who pays for it? MIT is a private university. Most of the funding comes from outside sponsorships and donations. This is where the social mechanisms I talked about come into play. MIT is a typical university because it reflects the characteristics of an American university. MIT professors refer to their institute as a research university. What is a research university? They explain that the European university tradition focuses on the transmission of knowledge, while the American university focuses on the discovery of knowledge, which is the basic meaning of a research university. MIT's activities are centered around this goal. The entire institute is organized on a laboratory basis, with more than 1,000 professors who teach and do research, and more than 1,000 people who do support work. In order to encourage innovation, they believe that the relationship between teachers and students is one of partnership, and therefore a new mutual relationship and a new way of working should be established to develop together with students. Students should be taught not to repeat the knowledge of the past, but to embrace the future. This spirit is one of the fruits of the great tree of the American spirit. It is difficult to estimate how much of a role the university has played in America's progress because it is so large. Universities have encouraged the spirit of innovation in generations of young people and have respected it and made it happen. This is the main driver of progress in any society. Without this atmosphere, it is difficult for society to progress, especially education. The most common problem for those involved in education is to see education as teaching what they already know and others don't, which is a reasonable logic. However, one could have a better logic to encourage the discovery of what neither the educator nor the educated know. One could say that this is the locomotive of human progress. MIT's education should be considered a success. 70% of the companies in the Boston area were started by students of this institute, most high-technology companies. More than 4,000 graduates teach at universities in countries around the world. People from all over the world also come to visit. As you walk around the campus, you can see majestic buildings standing next to the green lawn and people of all colors coming out of these buildings. There are an unusually large number of students of Asian descent. This is the power of knowledge. MIT also has a specific non-discrimination policy. MIT accepts students of any race, color, sex, or national origin who enjoy the rights, privileges, and programs generally accorded to students of the institute. This is also the power of knowledge. MIT's influence is spreading not only to American society, but to the entire world. It is spreading not only knowledge, but also the American spirit. Without a highly developed education, a nation cannot influence other nations and cannot truly stand among the nations of the world. Unlike industry, agriculture, and commerce, education cannot give people what these activities can give them, but it can provide what no other force can provide. Of course, American universities are not without problems. On the contrary, they are plagued with problems. But the best students still stand out. Some professors are anxious about the future. However, at universities like MIT, the competition is so fierce that the second best thing doesn't make it to the showcase. Section 3. Kennedy School of Government. There is a beautiful river in front of MIT, the Charles River. In the evening, you can walk slowly along this river, looking at the sweet couples around you and the birds flying in the air, which gives you a feeling of relaxation. Another university that shares the Charles River with MIT is Harvard University, which is also a world-renowned institution. We visited Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government. The Kennedy School of Government has a beautiful modern building. We were greeted by a professor here. He explained that the School of Government is different from the political science departments of universities in that it has its own unique goals and programs. Its main goal is to train people to serve in the public sector, hence the name School of Government. This college received a grant from the Kennedy family, hence the name Kennedy School of Government. From this goal of the college, its relationship to political life becomes very close. Because its main goal is to train people for positions in the public sector, its students will directly influence governmental and institutional activities. The Kennedy School of Government considers the government sector and the press, as well as all other areas, to be the public sector, but does not include sectors like private enterprise. The school is also not your typical administrative school, which focuses on administrative theory and basic knowledge education. The Kennedy School of Government focuses on education in public policy, on the development of generalists rather than specialists, and its curriculum is less theory-based and more practice-oriented. I asked how their discipline differs from political science. The professor explained that the study of political science seeks an accurate portrayal of some behavior, while the college is concerned with analyzing the actual situation. He said they were already trying to distinguish between two concepts. One is public administration, and the other is public management. While public administration studies have to make people and organizations more responsive, public management studies how to innovate, and they focus on two goals when training students. Ability to do policy analysis, program evaluation, economic statistics, etc. on issues in the public domain. Political knowledge, some knowledge of the political system, and international politics. Their research focuses on discovering how much room there is for exploitation of the political system, which requires students to be creative, sensitive, imaginative, integrated, and to have ideas. His summary is that the purpose is political and the foresight is scientific. To tell the truth, this is the cadre school of America. Americans have the advantage of treating anything as an area that can be explored. This is also true in the field of politics. The phenomenon of studying political issues as an object like particles and celestial activities is most prevalent in the United States, and I am afraid that even Europeans cannot be so thorough. The traditional European conception is to treat politics as art. The American concept is that politics can be a technology. There are a number of colleges like the Kennedy School of Government. Many other university departments of political science are doing this as well. The training of government officials by private schools is also known worldwide, I'm afraid. This approach to politics, the technicalization of politics, brings both advantages and disadvantages. However, it has been effective in the training of public policy personnel, that is, civil officials and policy designers. This provides a solid foundation for the functioning of social institutions. The United States is the country that has technicalized administration. One cannot serve in government without higher education and specialized training. Also, the political machinery itself forces the government to address increasingly intricate social issues that otherwise cannot compete for votes, hence the increasing depth and sophistication of research on a variety of specific issues. There are two important social effects that arise from this. One of them is to provide the civil official system with a higher quality of reserve personnel who are strictly trained with specialized knowledge and necessary skills to provide any possible service for political rule, thus guaranteeing its longevity. The second is to make government policy making a science. Because government officials have such a training background, government policy is naturally made in accordance with these standards. And without these standards, it is not only unacceptable to the various departments within government, but also unacceptable to society. The pros and cons of existing government policies, which are studied by thousands of people every day, are clear. Those who may enter the government arena are educated to discover new policy areas, which in turn can be a catalyst for government decision-making. As long as a government can formulate reasonable policies to solve social problems, it can survive. I am afraid that the long-debated question of why capitalism is dying but not perishing, rotting but not decaying, may find some explanation here. This is the question of whether policy is a field that can be studied and developed. The Kennedy School of Government is confident in its programs. One can see this in one of its programs. It has a program dedicated to training government analysts for developing countries. We can learn exactly how they do this by analyzing this program. This program is called the Edward S. Mason Program in Public Policy and Management. They argue that in modern societies, every country faces unprecedented challenges and must manage a rapidly changing society and economy. The public sector has a critical role to play to adapt to this change. Public sector officials must acquire skills in policy analysis, decision-making, and policy implementation. This program is designed to train senior officials from developing countries. It is planned to recruit about 50 students from developing countries each year. They are trained to have the analytical skills, managerial aptitude, and ethical spirit necessary for outstanding public service. All three of these indicators are important. Participants come from countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, have an average age of 37, and all have 12 years of work experience. The curriculum includes courses in English, mathematics, microeconomics, economics, computers, business and government, crime, energy and environment, health, housing and social development, human resources, international development, international security, journalism, politics, public policy, science and technology, transportation, urban, economic development, agriculture, central banking, and more. The teaching method is mainly case-based education, with a very fine division of policy areas. In addition, field trips are organized to broaden students' horizons by inviting political figures and scholars to give lectures and by organizing visits abroad to countries such as Mexico, Cuba, South Korea, Egypt, Morocco, Argentina, etc. As you can see, the program is quite good. However, the tuition is also prohibitively high. $35,012 per person, not including funds for study abroad. There is no funding for this program, so the students are responsible for their own funding. However, because of the reputation of the Kennedy School of Government, it has been able to recruit students every year. The college has made a small fortune as a result. Public administration education in the United States has its share of problems. However, because it also has many aspects of success, it is naturally attractive. A large part of that appeal comes not from public sector success, but from economic success. People are sometimes a little myopic, thinking that economic success can replace everything else. That being said, however, the role of the public sector's operations on its society cannot be ignored. Even more so, the role of the policy education sector on the public sector's operations cannot be ignored. Section 4. Talent Factory. The Maxwell School at Syracuse University in New York State is the premier educational institution for the training of public administration officials. It prepares students to enter federal and state government, as well as other levels of government, as key administrators in government. More than 20 U.S. ambassadors abroad are said to have graduated from the academy, as did the former ambassador to Pakistan, who was recently involved in a plane crash with President Mohammad Zia-ul-Haq. In Washington, D.C., the Academy has a legion of alumni. It has graduated not only in its home country, but also in many third-world countries. The Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs was established in 1924 as the first school of public administration in the United States. Its primary purpose is to educate and train civil servants, and it has been in existence for more than 60 years. The college has become a major talent factory, sending a steady stream of talent to various government agencies. The college is a comprehensive educational institution that includes the departments of anthropology, economics, geography, history, political science, public affairs, and sociology. The college does not enroll undergraduate students in public administration, primarily because undergraduates lack a certain level of experience and exposure. Therefore, the college concentrates on training master's students and in-service students in this program. About 6 doctoral students are recruited each year. These individuals generally do not do work in the government sector, but rather in the education sector. MA, master's degree students, are primarily trained to be professionals and enter the government sector. The federal and state governments often send employees to the college for further education. When I spoke with Professor Rosenblum at the college, there were many older people coming to hand in their assignments. I was puzzled at first, but then he explained that these students were employees of the federal government, sent there to receive a year of training. He jokingly said that he should be polite to them, because they all come from the Internal Revenue Service. The function of such colleges is to provide high-quality personnel to policy departments and other institutions and to ensure the efficient functioning of the public administration system. Although these colleges are educational institutions, they constitute an informal and indispensable part of the political and administrative system. We can look at how this school trains its students and what kind of knowledge structure it seeks to give them. The main courses offered by the school to Master of Public Administration students are as follows: Computers and the Computerization of the Public Sector. Focuses on guiding students to know the basic of computers and how to use them in public administration and helping them to actually operate them. Introduction to Public Administration. Guiding students through the basic problems of public administration, the fundamental issues facing public administration, and the methods of analysis of policies. Organizational theory. imparts knowledge about public sector organizations, especially how public organizations function and change, including the differences between public and private organizations, various ideas about organizations, individual and group decision-making, organizational design, and organizational environmental relationships. Public administration and democracy examines the place and role of public policy and administration in the context of constitutional democracy, and examines the relationship between administrative values, e.g. efficiency, economy, and constitutional values, e.g. equality, liberty, and due process, through legal theory, and how administration can reconcile these two. National planning and management gives students the capacity to discuss the main difficulties of governance and the establishment and implementation of long-term planning, covers the role of planning departments, forecasting tables, think tanks, multinational banks and companies, politicians, administrative elites, social and political consequences of the national plan, and preconditions. Statistics provides the basics of statistics, including descriptive statistics, trend analysis, data analysis, sampling evaluation, and hypothesis prediction. Research and development policy provides knowledge of the institutions and players involved in policy making and development, examining approaches to both, including innovation, invention, technology transfer, budget, and tax policies. Health policy, discussing some of the fundamental policy issues in health, including private funding reform, AIDS, and federal regulation of the health product protection industry. Development economics, a study of the main issues of third world development, including a review of measures and theories of development. Also analyzes basic issues such as population, employment, agricultural development, industrialization, education, and food. Topics related to the international environment for third world development, such as trade flows, investment, aid, and finance, are also analyzed. Managerial economics of public administration teaches students to use microeconomics to analyze public policy issues and using economic concepts to analyze complex policy issues. Public science and technology development examines the role of the public sector in science and technology development, analyzing special science and technology development policies and the relationship between government and industry. Energy principles, issues, and options. Research on energy policy and other topics related to energy policy. Computer applications for public managers, a study of how to use computers to process information, design, and build organizational and information systems in the large public sector. Public personnel and collective bargaining, discussion of civil service reform, growth and decline of the public sector, compensation, performance appraisal, equal employment opportunity, laws relating to public personnel, etc. Public finance. Analysis of public finance from budget, fiscal preparation, fiscal assessment, and adaptation to implementation. Fiscal analysis also includes topics such as the economic attributes of the budget, intergovernmental tax relations accounting, and fiscal reform. Government and the mass media. An analysis of the power relations and dependencies between government, the press, television, and cultural elites, the conflict between information and cultural policies in a democratic society, and government policies toward the press, communication, the arts, entertainment, and leisure activities. Defense policy analyzes the military, economic, political, and cultural characteristics of defense issues. Quantitative approaches to public policy analysis discusses several quantitative models in public policy analysis, such as cost-benefit analysis, linear programming theory, and decision theory. Public management and policy making discusses the theory, practice, and techniques of policy making, including organizational design, government reform, organizational communication, information management, organizational evaluation, the art of leadership and planning and management. Health service management, discussion of medical management, medical organization, etc. Marginal economics of public administration, applying microeconomics to analyze public policy issues such as supply and demand, firm behavior, and market equilibrium. Development administration examining the experiences and lessons learned from managing development programs over the past 25 years, analyzing the roles of those involved in development programs and administration, implementation of development programs, evaluation techniques, and other topics. Public personnel management, analysis of the basic characteristics of the public personnel system and the environment in which this system operates, the basic procedures of public personnel, and the roles and functions of public personnel managers. Local government finance in developing countries discusses the functions and roles of local government, the demand for local government, the sources of local government finance, and the role of higher levels of government on local government. Organizational development, analysis of organizations and patterns of human behavior in organizations, including organizational structures and processes, organizational development and behavior, individual, group behavioral dynamics, identification of organizational problems, appropriate organizational interventions, management strategies, techniques to increase organizational effectiveness. The above is part of the Masters of Public Administration program. At the master's level, the format of instruction is mostly discussion-based. Students are required to read a large amount of material before participating in the discussions, so that they can acquire as comprehensive a knowledge of the field and the available research. As an example, the course, National Planning and Management Competencies, requires students to read books such as Ideology and the Competitiveness of Nations by Lodge and Vogel, The Global Report 2000 and its Critique, The Power of Public Perception by Reich, Foresight by Asher, A Practical Plan by Dayons, The Road to Slavery by Hayek, The Social Limits to Growth by Hirsch, Characteristics of the Reagan Years by Palmer, The Governance of Modern Democracy by Parendorf, Bailout and Economic Efficiency, The Growth of Productivity by Baumol, Between Dependence and Autonomy by Greico, Seeking Safety by Vildavsky, Government and Spirituality by Tussman, The Lower Class by Auletta, Urban Conversations with George Kennan, Controlling Nuclear Weapons by Dahl. One course requires students to read the above-mentioned books, and all courses add up to a more extensive and complete professional training for students in the training process. The rigorous training ensures the quality of the students. This is the key to the success of Maxwell College's public administration program, and one of the reasons why their students are trained to excel in the government sector. The level of management of a society is closely related to the level of its government officials. If the quality of government officials is poor and their ability is low, an efficient government management system cannot be formed. It does not have the prerequisites. On the contrary, with a highly trained team of officials, there is a foundation for efficient public administration. Public administration is inseparable from its civil service system. The civil service system is inseparable from the training of government personnel, because the purpose of the civil service system is not to recruit the best people in society, but to absorb the most talented people in society for government management. The civil service examination alone does not guarantee efficient government. No one is born with the talent for government administration. Rigorous educational training is the way to develop such talent. The training of specialized governmental personnel is directly related to the quality of the political and administrative system, and thus affects the overall development of the socio-political economy to a considerable extent. That is why I say that educational institutions specializing in the training of governmental personnel are an informal part of the governmental system. In terms of training for public administrators, Maxwell's courses are all more vocational, concentrating on the operational side of public administration. Public administration is concerned with the specific management of social affairs. In modern society, government has a wide range of responsibilities, from economy, culture, education, transportation, scientific and technological development, foreign trade, to life, death, and environmental protection, which require public administrators to have expertise and skills in a variety of fields. Overly theoretical and academic training does not help the professional administrator. Professional administrators need knowledge and skills that are usable, workable, and actionable. Public administration education can hardly be truly useful for social development without going in this direction. Section 5. U.S. Naval Academy. The U.S. Naval Academy is located in Annapolis, not far from Washington, D.C. It is only about an hour's drive from Washington, D.C. Annapolis is also home to the Maryland State Government and State House. The building that houses the State House is the oldest of the buildings used by the government. It was here that General Washington shed his uniform and became a civilian president. That room is still preserved in its original state and is available for tours. This story sheds a lot of light, but here I just want to talk about the thoughts that came out of visiting the Navy Yard. One of the items on the visiting program was a lunch with a political science professor at the Naval Academy, which surprised us all. The Naval Academy has a special political science department? It was really good. The political science department has undergraduate and graduate students with a full political science department curriculum, just like a typical university political science department. I didn't know if West Point or the U.S. Air Force Academy had a political science department. The professor sitting next to me told me that the Naval Academy political science department had about 400 or 500 students and that the professors were all civilian, like those at other universities. I wondered what the graduates of the Naval Academy's political science department were doing. He replied, to serve in the U.S. Navy as officers. In addition, the Naval Academy's training takes into account not only the students' recent future careers, but also their needs after they leave the military. Thus, many students take courses in the political science department. In a number of countries where military academies have political science courses but no political science departments, U.S. military academies focus on educating students in political science as a very important part of political socialization. In many countries, the cause of political instability lies in the military, especially in countries in Africa and Latin America. Military intervention in politics is customary. The social function of U.S. military academies, which spread the basic principles and fundamental spirit of American politics, cannot be underestimated. In the United States, I am afraid that no one accepts military interference in politics, and no military personnel can do so. Of course, it would be too subjective to say that no one thinks this way, but the problem is that those who think about it cannot put it into action. Spreading the basic principles of a society among the military is a strategic measure for socio-political development. It is the same for democratic political development. In developing countries, the first step should be to spread the concept of democracy among military personnel. Even a developed country like the United States is not missing this link, let alone others. The U.S. Naval Academy is known as the world's first naval academy and claims to have the largest student housing in the world. The father of the United States Navy is buried under the chapel of this academy. The Naval Academy is located near the sea, with a vast azure landscape in the distance. I asked a woman professor who teaches in the political science department, "Do young Americans want to come here?" She said, "Many apply. Tens of thousands apply every year, and only 1,000 or so can be recruited. So the quality of students is so high that even girls are willing to marry them. Naval Academy cadets are required to wear uniforms, and we saw cadets dressed in snow white, wearing white hats, with short haircuts and shaved beards, looking very spirited. The boys were all in high spirits, probably as a result of careful selection. The president of the academy is a vice admiral. The leadership of the academy belongs to the military system, and the teaching of the academy belongs to the civilian system, which is very clearly divided. This can probably be considered a feature." The afternoon coincided with the U.S. Naval Academy's football team playing another university's team. The host invited us to go, and we obeyed. Football is the national sport of the United States. In the United States, often there is either conversation about football or no conversation at all. This is certainly a bit of an exaggeration. When we entered the stadium, we saw a huge crowd of people. On the opposite side of the stands sat the opposing crowd and cheerleaders and a band. On this side sat a snowy white crowd of Naval Academy students. There were 1,500 freshmen below. Before the start of the game, the band played the national anthem, and the whole crowd stood up with many people singing. Then 2 people came out to speak. He spoke about the glory of the Navy and said that those who contributed to the Navy should be remembered for generations to come, citing the names of 6 naval officers who died in Vietnam. The whole audience stood up and the salute rang out 6 times. Each time it rang, the names of the 6 men were displayed on a banner underneath the stands, and the entire audience observed a moment of silence. Years have passed since the Vietnam War, and they are still remembered. On major occasions they are remembered. The purpose is to encourage a sense of honor. Next, the game officially began, with cheerleaders from both sides making a lot of noise, and first-year students from the Naval Academy lining the lawn in a long line to welcome their players to the field of play, where players from both sides fought for each other and were very intense. I see that football is very simple. There is no delicate tactics. Players mainly rely on strength and speed. The key is to be able to catch and knock down the opponent, so the players on both sides are big and bold and rampant. However, according to people who are proficient in this sport, there is a great deal of tactics used in football. After watching the game, 3 things in particular struck me. One of them is the American focus on honor. Spectators on both sides are extremely concerned about scoring points. If the Naval Academy team scored, the Academy students would applaud and cheer enthusiastically. First-year students sitting below would run around the field to do push-ups, estimated to be in the hundreds, expressing a delight too great to localize. When the opposing team won the game, there would be a cheer in the opposing stands, and the band would play a tune. Cheerleaders from both sides also kept drumming, permeated by a strong sense of honor. The second is that Americans are all about strength. Football has tactics, but, strictly speaking, there are no very subtle tactics. It's mostly about strength. There is probably no sport in the world that has a higher ratio of players on the field to players than football. Football is about hitting hard and rushing hard to reach the line of scrimmage. It embodies the American spirit of using strength to get there fast. Americans have embraced this spirit in the military, politics, and economics, and in many other areas. The third is that Americans are very outspoken. I got this impression during a break in the stadium. During the break, the opposing university's band came on to play, and at first the Naval Academy students were not impressed, and got up in arms twice. Then the conductor of the opposing band said that they would play a tune specifically for the Navy to show their respect for it. They played a majestic tune, probably a naval anthem, or something like that. All the stands on the Naval Academy side stood up, and all the audience on the other side stood up as well. A very touching scene. After the performance, both sides applauded and shouted enthusiastically. Just a moment ago, they were still saber-rattling, and then all of a sudden they became cordial and enthusiastic. The Naval Academy is a military academy, but we can see that it places great emphasis on enabling the spread of political spirit. At the same time, it focuses on cultivating a sense of honor among the younger generation in various activities. In fact, it makes the students receive the national spirit that has already been formed. Instead of treating the military academy as a mere military technical academy, where only military technical training is provided, the purpose of education is first of all defined as the training of qualified citizens. From this, we can see that the young generation, no matter what kind of school they enter, whether it is a general university or a military academy, they have to be baptized with the American spirit. This is the first purpose of education, and all other purposes are secondary. From this viewpoint, it is easy to understand how the United States reproduces its own system. Section 6. Education Export. Sometimes the question is often asked, why do so many people in the world today want to move to the United States, especially people from developing countries? Walking around the United States, one can often meet people from foreign countries discussing together how to obtain a green card and how to immigrate. This activity has become a profession, and a lucrative one at that. There are often advertisements in the newspapers that say, this law firm specializes in green cards, no green card, full refund. In a number of countries, American culture, or more precisely, the American way of life, since many people find it difficult to determine what American culture is, has a powerful influence. Lifestyle is a comprehensive concept that refers not only to people's stereotypes in terms of clothing, food, housing, and habits, but also includes economic behavior, management styles, and political values, among others. What do people rely on to spread the dominant lifestyle of a society? Throughout history, various means can be listed, such as military conquest, with the Roman Empire conquering the provinces, and fascism conquering its neighbors. Then political relations, such as the relations between suzerain states and colonies. Economic integration, with the formation of today's world system and the massive exchange of relations such as international trade and finance. Educational penetration, such as the Hellenistic era and the theological era of the Middle Ages, and so on. In these ways, military conquest is a form of coercion, and political relations are a form of power. Neither of them can guarantee the penetration of a value into the hearts and minds of people. They can enforce a set of ideas, but they cannot make people really accept them with conviction and comply with them. In today's world, it is the latter two forces that play a dominant role. One is economic power. The development of economic forces reveals to people the most basic pursuits of human nature, which they can easily accept. The post-war economic development of the United States has been the main medium for the spread of its way of life. The second is the power of education. Education is a magical force, which subliminally spreads to people the dominant beliefs of a society. This is true within a society as well as in a society's relationship with the outside world. Foreign students are found in large groups on university campuses. The number of foreign students is among the highest in the world. Education, which has become a wide channel for the American way of life to spread to the rest of the world. So in answering that question at the beginning, it is important to first think about how America influences other societies and how America spreads their ideas to foreign countries. Many of the students who study in the United States came here with financial support from various organizations. A variety of institutions exist to encourage and assist people from other countries to come to the United States for education. There are few countries that can compare to the United States in terms of investment in this area. But these institutions play a role in spreading the American way of life and maintaining America's international standing in a way that the Seventh Fleet and the Space Shuttle do not. Let's take a look at the largest nonprofit international education organization in the United States, the Institute of International Education. Founded in 1919, the Institute's main purpose is to help foreigners come to the United States to receive an education, and its main activities include administer scholarship, grants, and subsidies to enable people to study, conduct research and receive training outside their own country, organizing projects in international research and publishing research reports, results, guidelines, etc., providing information on international research through offices in New York, Atlanta, Chicago, Denver, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., China, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Mexico, Thailand. Organizing presentations and seminars on international education issues and developments, provide funding and staffing services to agricultural and health centers around the world. This is its main area of activity. The organization is well funded, with a financial outlay of more than $100 million in 1986, and in 1987 it had 247 programs under its umbrella, financed by 145 entities, including governments, bilateral agencies, international organizations, foundations, universities, and corporations. Its programs cover 152 countries and territories. From the point of view of training human resources, it provides facilities to approximately 10,000 people. This number is equivalent to the entire student body of a secondary university. Of these 10,000, 5,000 are foreign students pursuing degrees in the United States. 2,700 foreign students are training in non-degree programs or participating in vocational training programs, the vast majority of whom, with the exception of 200, are in the United States. 1,200 teaching assistants from various countries are working in various international centers, and 800 distinguished individuals from various countries are visiting scholars. It also funds school publications, research, seminars, presentations, professional development projects, etc., and 562 higher education institutions have received funding from it, and so on. The above figures give a sense of the enormous power that such an organization alone can have in international educational output, and what a tremendous amount of power American educational output can constitute when added to other organizations. A significant amount of the IEA's funding comes from the Fulbright program. The Fulbright program is a government-created fund. Either way, the promotion of educational output is not only a concept and a program of an educational organization, but also a concept and a program of a government. This is a strategic choice in terms of long-term political development, both in terms of domestic and international politics. The potential benefits of exporting education far outweigh any vested interests in the economic sphere. The Association for International Education has a number of specific programs, the main ones being the Fulbright Graduate Fellowship, which provides financial support exclusively to foreign students, the Latin American and Caribbean Fellowship, which provides funding primarily to Latin American countries, and the African Student Fellowship, the Asian Student Fellowship, and the European Student Fellowship. China-related programs include the Committee on International Relations Studies with the People's Republic of China, CIRS, which is funded by the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and others. In 1986, the committee sponsored 26 Chinese students and 7 visiting scholars. The association's activities range from art, music, technology, architecture, business management, human rights, agriculture, natural resources, and more. Through this wide variety of activities, students from other countries naturally embrace the American dominant lifestyle. They also embrace core values. The export of education influences the way of thinking, emotional orientation, psychological stereotypes, value choices, and behavioral norms of a significant level of people. Many of the highly educated people here constitute the elite of the host country and play more or less critical roles in the political, economic, cultural, educational, scientific, technological, and artistic fields of that country. The two basic functions of educational output are the transmission of knowledge and the emotional investment. The latter is a political capital that cannot be underestimated in any country. In terms of political management, this political capital functions in 2 ways. In terms of domestic politics, the less pressure there is on any political and administrative system, the easier it is to exert itself. Pressure on a political system can come from within or from without. If external forces endorse and approve of a political system's activities and choices, then the pressure on the political system will be greatly reduced. External forces of affirmation will also counteract internal forces of negation. If a political system encounters strong external opposition or lack of understanding, its internal pressures will also rise and the political system will be in trouble. In the context of foreign politics, educational exports create a condition that no other force can provide, and that is an increased understanding abroad of the country's foreign policy, an unparalleled atmosphere for the success of a country's external political activity. The success of external political activity often lies not in whether the policy itself is reasonable, but in whether it is understood and accepted, and in whether it meets with the right international public opinion. The failure of the foreign policy of many countries lies not in the policy itself, but in the absence of the right cultural atmosphere. Here is where the educational outlet comes into play. It expands the scope of understanding for a nation's politics. To accept a country's way of life and core values is to form the criteria by which to evaluate and think about issues in the terms most meaningful to them. The investment in this area is most valuable in terms of long-term political development. Section 7. The Furnace of Technology. Chicago is one of the mega cities in the United States. I drove to Chicago with a friend, and it took 5 hours. We took the 80 freeway to the 55 freeway, which runs through downtown Chicago. On the busy highway, among the fast-moving convoy like in New York, one feels a modern rhythm, a common feeling among Chinese people. The first time on the highway, there is an inexplicable sense of nervousness. Chinese people and many people in developing countries are used to a slow pace of life, and when they are suddenly placed in a fast pace, there is a psychological and cultural discomfort and even a physical discomfort. I call this the modernization stress reaction, but in the United States, you cannot travel without using the highway with a mandatory speed of traffic so that people quickly eliminate the modernization stress reaction. Imagine what it would be like without this compulsion. The question of whether a nation as a whole will have a modernization stress reaction in the process of modernization, what the consequences will be, and how to eliminate a nation's modernization stress reaction is a problem facing developing countries. We first visited the aquarium. Inside, like an ocean world, there are thousands of strange fish and marine life. People can learn more complete knowledge of marine life here. Then we went to the Field Museum of National History, which is actually a nature museum plus a history museum, a combination rarely seen in museums. On the one hand, there are thousands of plant and animal specimens, and on the other hand, there are artifacts of American history and some foreign history on display. The Indian artifacts and history displayed in this museum are extensive. There are also several huge totem poles standing in the lobby, which are probably some kind of indigenous cult objects of South America. There are even a few items from the Chinese Qing dynasty on display, but not many. In terms of a natural and social museum, it is probably the first of its kind in the world. The most interesting museum is not either of the above museums, but the Museum of Science and Industry. This is a museum that covers a large area and has amazing displays, but is free to visit. As soon as you enter the hall, you can see that there are more children and teenagers than adults, which is perfectly in line with the objectives of this museum. The aim is to enable the young generation to develop a scientific and technological spirit and interest in the furnace of science and technology. The museum is one of the most attractive tourist attractions in Chicago, visited by approximately 4 million people each year. The pavilion has 75 exhibition halls and more than 2,000 exhibition series through which it systematically demonstrates scientific principles, technological advances, and industrial applications to its visitors. This pavilion differs from others in that it is designed with a special principle of audience participation. Visitors can push buttons, levers, etc., thus participating in the exhibits and having an unforgettable experience, especially for children and teenagers. Sometimes at the push of a button, someone talks on the phone. Sometimes at the push of a button, there is a TV program. Sometimes you can operate a machine tool. Sometimes you can walk into a giant model of a heart to learn about the structure of the heart. Sometimes you can get into a car driving simulator to drive a car. Sometimes you can go underground to learn about the structure of the Earth's crust, and so on. The museum was founded by Julius Rosenwald and opened in 1933. It is located on the shores of beautiful Jackson Lake. It attracts thousands of people every day. The following is a brief list of exhibits that will help you grasp this furnace of technology. The exhibition series here includes airplanes from various eras, old-time typewriters, news, telephone and telegraph, agricultural machinery, urban construction, computers, oil, strata, audiovisual, basic science, industry, automobiles, chemistry, movies, medicine, bicycles, post and telecommunications, electricity, food, photography, money, energy, libraries, biology, human science, railroads, oceans, solar energy, and more. There should be everything, from the initial development of science and technology in ancient times to the latest achievements in modern science and technology, the space shuttle, computers, etc. Nothing seems to be left out. The exhibit also features the U-505, a German submarine captured by the U.S. Army in World War II, and entering the exhibit is like entering the Hall of Science, a dazzling experience. This is a real furnace of science. The children are brought here by their parents, and they stay here like fish in water. Their interest was fully mobilized by the various applications of light and electricity in the exhibition hall. It is not difficult to imagine the impact these impressions will have on their young minds. Society is very focused on developing the science and technology needed for the development and progress of society as a whole. In order to achieve social development and progress, the first and foremost thing is to make the young generation grow up strong. In this regard, society as a whole has spared no expense. From elementary school to high school, young people are provided with excellent learning conditions, making the United States a children's paradise, as some call it. This mechanism is a factor that cannot be ignored in the continued development and prosperity of society and is worth studying. In many societies, the focus of attention is not on the early stages of life, but on the middle and later stages. In terms of individual comfort in life, this is appropriate. But is it too late for the progress of society as a whole? Although the United States is a commodity society and a money-oriented society, however, when it comes to science and technology education, they deeply understand how to spend money to get the most out of it. The Museum of Science and Industry is an example of this. Many museums charge a fee, but the Museum of Science and Industry is free, open daily, and the huge parking lot in front of the museum is also free. Education also has this characteristic, and although the tuition required for a college education is staggering, education below high school is free. People in many places see the museum as an institution with an educational function as well. In some non-commodified societies, activities are already moving toward being measured by monetary standards, while in a typically monetized society like the United States, efforts are made to keep some areas with basic educational functions non-commodified, not only as a choice, but as a policy that has to be done in a commodity economy. Otherwise, these activities would be crowded out by the commodity economy, a point worthy of note for society moving toward a commodity economy. In the evening, when you climb the Sears Tower, the tallest building in the world, and look out over the blue lake in the far distance and the interlocking buildings below, you can better appreciate the power of science and technology to create miracles. The progress of society requires the innovation of the younger generation. The innovation of the younger generation requires their full understanding of the progress that has been made, and only then can they build on that foundation. How can a person go 100 feet further if he or she knows nothing about the creations of those who came before him or her? How can designers and builders be bold if they never know what a building is? It is because of the second highest tower that there is the highest, which is a simple truth. All modernization achievements of society should be fully opened up so that society is a grand furnace of science and technology that smelts the spirit of modernization. In a society that keeps the achievements of modernization closed, it is the human spirit that is ultimately closed. The process of transmission of modernization and the function of education reproduces a system on two levels. Education provides the recognition of the value rationality of that system, and the transmission of science and technology provides the material basis. Education and science and technology do not directly produce material goods, but they do create the future. End of Chapter 9.